First of all, introducing our challenger.
Out of the blue corner.
He's going to step in and he does. It's all over.
Let's bring on the boom.
This is Eternal MMA.
Mixed martial arts fans, welcome back and thank you for joining me once again on today's video for the Eternal Insiders Podcast back for 2023. My name's Luke and as always, I'm your host. And joining me in today's video, none other than one of the men at the helm of Eternal MMA, here to talk about what has been and what is upcoming in the world of Eternal. Talking, of course, about Mr. Ben Vickers joining me for the second time on the Insiders Podcast. Ben, how you doing today, man? Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me back, mate. I'm glad I didn't drop the ball that badly the first time that you invited me back for the second one.
The ball was well and truly rolling, man. I think we got 3 YouTube videos out of that one, didn't we? So everyone enjoyed it. Cam shared it everywhere and everyone was keen to check it out. So I think we did very well the first time. Excellent.
Let's try and improve.
Let's try and improve. We've got a few things we want to talk about, but first thing I just want to touch on is the big news that we broke on Eternal the other day that UFC is coming back down under to Sydney, of course, for UFC 293. But on that news, we also got Eternal will be doing a very similar thing to what we did in Perth, in that it'll be happening the night before the event as well. Anything you can sort of tell us about that there? Very exciting news. Everyone's sort of buzzing about it. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, not much more than you know, really. It happened very fast, and we had to get our skates on. So we've had the team working pretty hard and down in Sydney, and yeah, we're looking forward to unveiling all our plans. It's good to be able to spring into action when you get some information, and we love going like on that. The Perth was perfect, like the night before, and I'm sure Sydney's going to have the same feel and some familiar faces on both cards. So yeah, I'm really excited for Sydney. We've never been there before, obviously, as well. So our promotional debut in New South Wales. So I'm excited for that too.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I didn't actually realize until I actually read the post it was the first time in Sydney. Like I think I had in my mind because everything happened so much on the East Coast, from Gold Coast and being up to Brisbane and all that sort of thing, and even being down in Melbourne. Like I thought that I never really sort of thought about it large, but I thought as many times it might have sort of been in New South Wales, but it's the first time.
Yeah, we were very close before. We were in Coolangatta before, which is very close to northern New South Wales, but we never quit. I think you can cross the street just down from the venue and change state. So we've almost done a New South Wales show, but not quite. But it is somewhere we've always wanted to go. This seems to be the perfect opportunity for us to get in there and hit the ground running. And we have been campaigned hard by a lot of people in Sydney to get down there. So now it's time for them to put their money where their mouth is. And I expect these tickets to sell out as fast as you could imagine.
Oh yeah. Like when something like that comes together, like, is that just a matter of, with all the, all the turning cogs, that sort of thing with the UFC, the machine sort of coming down on, like, is that sort of something that you wait to see when those kind of things happen? Like, how did this one sort of come together? Like, do you find out about the UFC event happening and then go, we got to sort of get something happening the night before? Was it something that was going to be happening a similar date anyway? Or is this
like, without giving away all my secrets, Luke, there may be a bit of a partnership going on between Eternal and UFC Fight Pass, and so we do sometimes get privy to information, but I can assure you it's not very much before everyone else does. Sometimes hours, but that's kind of how it works.
No, it's pretty cool the way that sort of lines up because with everything that went down in Perth with the last event, like how much of a success with that? Like we'd obviously already talked about it the last time that you came on the show, but that was huge, and like sort of the turnout, that we had at HBF Stadium and everything, and then just everyone gearing up to get up first thing in the morning, to go to the UFC the next day. Like you sort of expect the same sort of thing from everyone in Sydney. Like, it's obviously massive there in New South Wales, obviously Rob Whittaker, a lot of MMA fans. Like, this should do something just as spectacular, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Or more so, Although Perth will be unbeatable for me just because of that weekend and where I'm from and where I've been for the last decade. It's going to be hard for me in my whole career to top that weekend. That was pretty special. But I'm sure for everybody else, Sydney will be better.
Yeah, I mean, like for me personally, I mean, the one in Perth, I mean, that was my first event that I'd sort of been to for Eternal, and that sort of blew me away. And I think like last
Wow.
time that you sort of came on and we talked about like, I didn't personally sort of know what to expect. I mean, you sort of get geared up for the UFC and that sort of thing, but I mean, that blew my mind. I think I said last time on the show, it's one thing to kind of watch it on TV but to actually go to an event, and hear all the different sounds and that sort of thing, it's like crazy. So, I mean, like anyone who's, going to UFC 293, obviously it's going to be packed out. I mean, a hell of a sort of an event to have, both promotions sort of running side by side, like get to that event. Cause I mean, the Eternal event just blow you away. I mean, you can speak to that sort of all day, but I mean, to be able to fill your entire weekend with professional mixed martial arts, both from a local perspective and from international pro perspective, I mean, it's sort of huge. So lot to look forward to there, but obviously lot to look forward to coming up with the next card. But
yeah, absolutely.
I want to talk a little bit previously about the last card that we had, Eternal 75, Pereira versus Medina. I mean, I spoke about this to a couple of other people in terms of if you look at who was on that card and, what we sort of had for the main event and everything, you sort of looked at it, wasn't necessarily loaded as much as, the star power that we've seen in cards go by. But I mean, in terms of just the fight quality and everything, that is one of the best cards. And I mean, they're all crackers, but
yeah,
quality and everything we saw, all the finishes, talking from the prelims with the amateurs up to the main card. I mean, damn near every single one of them are absolute bangers. Like, must have been a treat to be at, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And it just blows me away that the level every time that we do a show just seems to go up and up and up and up and up. And it's always like the bar is always set very early. Like the prelims at Eternal always go off. I mean, the matchmaking that Cam did for that show was phenomenal. And yeah, it was a bit of a sleeper. Like on paper, it wasn't a big card. There wasn't any title fights on it. But me and Cam knew that it was going to be like fireworks. And the one fight that probably didn't deliver what you might have expected
Drilich and Renouf
was the Drilich Renouf fight. And I feel for Ant in that fight because I didn't realize, obviously my cornering would tell you that I didn't realize that he had quite a few problems going into that fight that I wasn't fully aware of. So I feel like a bit of an arsehole, like retrospectively to Ant because of what he did to Barber. There's a lot of weight of expectation on his shoulders when you knock someone out the way he did the previous Eternal, and then you come out and have a bit of a performance like that. It can be hard to understand, but I'm actually, like, in hindsight, really proud of him because he was battling with some shit and he didn't want to tell anyone. He didn't want to make any excuses. He just wanted to fight, and he still hasn't said anything about it. And he still, I only found out from his brother the full extent of what he was dealing with. So I wanted to give some props to Ant when I got a chance because I might have given him a bit of a hard run on the side of the octagon, as I do sometimes get over enthusiastic with these things. But no, the card was outstanding. I mean, the fights, like from the main event where it was technical brilliance, two veterans. Yeah, maybe it wasn't the barn burner that some of the other fights of the night offered. But if you want to talk about composure and veterans getting after it, veterans of their craft, it was a good fight to watch.
Yeah, I mean, sort of top to bottom, and I mean, like, you talk about Ant, and sort of the performance he had. I mean, it's pretty sort of tough when you compare to the rest of the card, like how damn near perfect every single one of those fights.
Yeah,
perspectives, like, they can't all sort of win fight of the night. You know what I mean? Like, it is what it is. As you just said, like, I mean, Diego and Jesse, with the sort of the fight they had, and I mean, even that, as you said, like, for the technical brilliance they put on. I mean, just some of the other show-stopping stuff that we had. I mean, everything from the storyline, like Peter Templer getting the job done over Lock Stitt, a guy that was sort of being touted as the guy that no one wanted to fight, came in, against the sort of the script and got the job done. I mean, and that just sort of raises his profile a little bit. So many cool things to talk about there. You get guys like Harry Webb, sort of come out, even you commentating. You said you weren't quite even sure who he was to sort of start with, but damn, you sort of know who he is now. Even some of the guys like on the, in the amateur finals, like on the amateur prelims, like Odin Musket, like hell of a performance, like so many good guys coming through. And like you sort of said a little bit before, like the level that's kind of coming through now, even from the amateur perspective, it's almost like when you go down the card, if you went back however many cards ago, it was like the last couple of fights seemed very professional, but even when you're starting to get down to sort of the prelims and everything now, like everyone's starting to look good. compared to
Yeah.
like that level is just coming up, and you see that firsthand.
Yeah, iron sharpens iron. You know, you put people in evenly matched fights from early, you know, and get these boys like not walking through people and learning lessons at their early careers, which is what the amateur career is all about. Because when all is said and done, no professional matchmaker is looking at your amateur record particularly harshly in terms of wins and loss percentages. You know what I mean? So, well, they shouldn't be, in my opinion. So get the boys in there. And I think Eternal prove a point with that kind of matchmaking. You know, there's very few like run over prelim fights, you know, or fights generally on the card top to bottom. You know, there's not people just starching people in seconds or dominating. And hard fights make good fighters, you know.
With that, I mean, obviously Diego sort of getting the win in that fight, and I want to move a bit ahead and talk about the next upcoming card. But with Diego sort of getting that win, you know, kind of still hovering around that picture of always sort of being in the you know, the sort of the title picture. Is there any sort of is there anything to be sort of said about what might be next for him? Is he still sort of in that title contention? You know, like, is that something you can touch on at all now, or is that still like an evolving situation for Diego, or maybe who might be sort of, you know?
Yes, it's really rough for me to try and match make that division with Rod Costa being prominent in it. So I kind of take a backward step there and fence it nicely and let Cam have to make all these kind of decisions. For me personally, and I haven't discussed this with Cam, but I'm sure like there's one fight that really makes sense to me, which is the rematch. Like Diego Abdallah makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I think they both deserve that fight again. I mean, Abdallah's gone on since then to go on a tear, right?
Yeah.
And Diego sort of put him away relatively early, but you know, there was some pressure in that fight from the striking, and it would be interesting to see having seen them go at it before.
Yep.
But to be perfectly honest, like the long-term future planning of Eternal is mostly done by Cam now. Like I'm super intrinsic in my own team at the moment. I try not to get involved in too much of the matchmaking where I have prominent people, because it's just not something I like to do. And also I'm super busy with lots of other things, and so Cam's running the ship. I'm sort of helping out where I can, and I drive a little bit in Perth, you know, with the logistics and stuff like that. But Cam's doing all those decisions, and yeah, we talk about it and stuff like that. But and I'm not throwing him under the bus here, but he's the one that has final say on all of these things. So, but I think Diego Abdallah is that gets me excited, that fight. I like the story behind it. I like the progression. I like where everyone's at. I think Abdallah could rightfully have a title shot next. However, Diego's kind of keeps sticking his hand up, doesn't he? He's like, he's out, and he's in, he's out, and he's in. And the storyline's there, and as a promotion, it makes a lot of sense. And as a fan, I'm like, I'd love to see them two go at it again. I'd love to see Abdallah get another go at getting that one back, and I'd love to see Diego like really cement his position at the top of the division and really make him the, you know, how many runs? This is his third run to the title now.
Yeah. Yep.
Imagine how unbelievable it would be if he could do that. And he can. He's good. He can do that. He just needs to put it together at the right times. Like, he seemed to come on strong at the end of the Justin fight. You know, who knows if he could have clicked into gear a couple of rounds earlier.
I mean, he won that last round. That was the round he sort of took against Justin. So I mean, we know what a tear Justin's on at the moment, obviously coming up with that card, but yeah, he's always sort of there or thereabouts. I don't think there's too many people that wouldn't want to see that rematch with Abdallah. I mean, Abdallah's looked fantastic in his last couple of fights. Obviously, you know, the big win against Josh Kuhn, you know, some cards go on it, sort of thing. So that'd be super, super cool to see again and see how that division plays out. A lot of cool things happening there, but just another division that's looking super, super interesting too for Australia. I mean, the lightweight division, like, yeah,
unbelievable,
on fire right now. Like, obviously we've got a title fight and that sort of thing coming up. Now, obviously, you know, the last pod that I did, I had Harry Webb on there making his professional debut. As I said before, I mean, like, just the level for me for a guy making his pro debut and sort of how good he looked, and even just like everything, like his composure and that sort of thing. Like, you know, for how high level that fight was, because like, for me, the way he was sort of composing himself and throwing things at the right time and switching up his stance and his combos and that sort of thing, you sort of tend to see a lot of guys that are that quick and that good want to come out and blitz people. like straight away. Like that's personally what I sort of see. But for him to sort of go that 3 rounds and look as good as he did and get the finish and really think his way through the fight and look like he had such a high fight IQ for his debut, like that was incredible. I think he's definitely one to watch for the future for sure. Yeah.
I would say both of them. And I said this about when Quillen and Marfan fought.
Yeah.
And I said, we could well see these two boys fighting for the title in a few years' time. You know what I mean? And obviously, Quillen's got there a bit quicker. But, you know, Dom and Quillen could have easily met. And I think that was one of those fights as well. You could see Harry and Ollie challenge, you know, they're going to avoid, they won't fight each other again for a while, but they could run parallel to one another to the top of that division. They're a problem, like high-level striking, cardio. You know, they went at it for the full duration of the fight. Like I said, the striking, the grappling ability, the durability of both men, the ability to absorb punishment, the ability to give out punishment, and the composure for two debut. Like how you watch that fight and you don't know the record, you're not saying they're 0-0 as professionals.
No, you wouldn't have a clue. Like I said on the show, like I was talking to Rod because he posted something on Instagram and I said to him, I was like, you know, both these guys look like they've had multiple fights. Like, you know, with Harry getting the win, like I said, like you'd be damn near fooled if you just chucked on the tally then and saw him competing as hard as he was. And just the way he was going about it, like, he looked like he'd had 10 pro fights. Yeah. It was incredible. And
I don't mean any disrespect to Harry when I say I've never heard of him before. You know,
we know.
I have very little time in my life. I don't even ever really watch Eternal back, let alone watching other promotions. I don't even watch the UFC. I just train fighters and study fighters and match fights, but I don't really have time to consume it that much. So I'm not really a good fan. Like I wouldn't, if you go, oh, do you remember this UFC fighter? I'm not that guy, you know. I'm like,
I think that'd be one too many hats for you to wear, right? I mean, like, as a coach, you're there sort of, you know, running the show and that sort of thing alongside Cam, like, you know, chucking the fan hat on's a little bit much to ask, yeah?
Yeah, someone was talking to me the other day and they said to me, oh, you're not a fan, are you? And I was like, no, not really. Like, I'm just in it. You know, like, this is just my world, but, like, I'm not. I'd love to consume everything. You know what I mean? Because I love the sport and, like, I think Harry fight mostly on Demolition. So I would have loved to have watched all these fights and watched these come up. Like I would have loved to have watched every prospect in Australia. But sometimes you just have to get a beautiful surprise like I did. Wow, this guy's amazing.
That you're put in that position though, right? Because like all of a sudden you find out that you're commentating sort of that night. Whereas if you're not commentating, you're not having to be like, just for the record, I didn't know who this bloke was. Sure know who he is now, but you know, it's a fun position for you to be put in. But I mean, like on the flip side of that, you know, to be able to sort of say like, you know, to be fair, I didn't know who this bloke was, but I know who he is now. Like on that kind of platform, like UFC Fight Pass and that sort of thing. I mean, he got himself that highlight on the Fight Pass Instagram and sort of thing. Like what better place to do it so everyone kind of knows your name? Like there's nowhere better.
Yeah, I mean, and I think poor Ollie, like because Harry's performance, like couldn't have displayed what he displayed like without Ollie. Do you know what I mean? Because Ollie was such a good dance partner and I can't wait to get Ollie back in there as well in that lightweight division. Like, there's so many interesting fights for both of those guys.
Yeah.
We've got Roy Armistead coming back soon off a long layoff. He's actually moved from Melbourne, and he's training with me now. He's actually living at the bottom of my garden at the moment.
Yeah, right.
Not in like, you know, there's like a room for him and that. It's not just under a tree.
Throw a blanket over him, like
yeah. Every now and again, I light the fire and stuff like that. But no, so you know that division's heavy at both ends. You know what I mean? With the ones coming in and the ones like going out. Like you know, at the top end, it's people are watching that division globally, and it's very exciting, the lightweight division.
Yeah, you reckon it's sort of safe to say that that's probably the division right now in Australia, like you said, like top to bottom?
No, yeah, it's hard. Yeah, 100%. No, all the other divisions are struggling, from my eyes.
Sure. I mean, you know, pale in comparison what's going on in the lightweight division, but I mean, you know, looking ahead to the big things that are happening in the lightweight division, obviously the featherweight division 2, Eternal 76, coming at us, June 10th, we're looking at for the date. Obviously the big one, you know, Justin Van Heerden versus Rod Costa. You know, two champions going against each other. Obviously, they've already fought before, and you know, Rod sort of got the win there. But I mean, this is sort of one of the bigger fights that, you would have sort of been able to put on, or that Eternals, sort of put on, ever, in terms of the intrigue and the run those guys have been on recently. Obviously, we know the run Justin had in 2022, and both being sort of title holders. Like, there's so much that's kind of in there, in terms of the interest. Obviously, you train Rod and that sort of thing, and obviously, you're wearing the promoter's hat too. But I mean, can you talk a little bit about that fight? Just from like a neutral perspective, obviously, not from a fan perspective, so to speak, but huge fight. Like, I'm psyched. I can't wait for it. Like, I know a lot of other people are buzzed about it too. Yeah.
Yeah, it was supposed to happen in Feb. I mean, it's actually a shame for those boys they didn't get to do it on that platform, because it was appropriate. Justin has been written off so many times, and he just keeps beating people. And I tip my hat to him. He's never said no to a fight. He's put himself in some bonkers positions sometimes, but he's a fighter, man, and he's in a camp with brains like no other. Do you know what I mean? With Joe and Volk, and you look at the way they fight, and Colby and all those guys that are training out there, that they all fight with a very high fight IQ. So Justin keeps leveling up his fight IQ also. So you can see the little improvements there. And I'm interested to see what the game plan is that they're going to implement. We're obviously implementing a striking game plan. Like, we want this fight to stay on the feet, and we're looking for the knockout.
A little bit of insider information.
Yeah. Give the game plan
Justin, if you happen to be watching, I'll keep a fake in one way, right? It's like a little bit of misdirection.
But honestly, like, these two boys, Rod looking obviously for that double champ status, simultaneously actively held. I don't think it's ever been done in Eternal before. Obviously,
I was going to ask, have we had that before? I don't actually think. I mean, I haven't.
Sean Etchell had been a champ at two weights separately at two different times, I believe. I don't want to butcher it, but I think it would be the first simultaneous, like, active champ in both divisions, which is massive. But Justin's the champ for a reason, and everyone writes them off all the time. And I'm sure a lot of people are going, "Oh, they fought before, blah blah blah." I'm not one of those people that's going to write Justin off. I know the fight is going to go completely differently to the way the first fight went. I'm really excited for it. I can't, like, obviously I think about it a lot, planning for it. And yeah, I'm just looking forward to seeing those two boys in there again, and seeing the improvements, and seeing the how the fight. That second fight is always interesting, right? So
I mean, especially with both fighters, like, with how much they've evolved in like such a short space of time, and I know that happens with a lot of fighters, but you see it sort of playing out. Like, when you talk about Justin, and people don't necessarily expect him to sort of go on the run he has, but it's sort of like he goes about his business, and sort of. It's funny to sort of say about Justin, the guy that does like to speak his mind, and he'll tell you sort of how it is. But I mean, as far as just getting the job done the way he does in the cage, like, just so business-like. There's not a lot of sort of flash about him or anything like that, but he just looks like a guy that's just like hard to beat and hard to keep off you. Like, he just sort of, when he gets older, and he's sort of striking game sort of coming along too. And we got that at Rod as well. Obviously, we had kickboxer Costa born out of the original fight sort of thing. So the way both those guys have come up, and to be able to get that as a second fight, with the belt on the line, and having Rod as a champion, like what a sort of storyline that is. It's so sort of cool to see. Obviously, you sort of being, there in Rod's corner, that sort of thing as well. Like you probably talked about this before, but like, how much of a sort of strange position is that for you to be in, like, to be able to talk about these guys and, sort of hype them both up, but also having to put your coaching hat on at the same time? Like, how much of a conflict is that for you personally?
No, not really. I'm an honest person. I mean, I'm going to say it how I see it. And I think everyone knows, like, I have the greatest amount of respect for Justin. I've told him that many times myself. I told him, it was the first thing I told him in the cage after. In fact, after Rod beat him the first time, I actually said to him, "Keep your head up, mate. You'll be back," or something like that. And he's gone on a tear ever since then. So I'm not saying it was my little pep talk, but no, I have a lot of friends in this sport that we compete against each other a lot, and it's hard, because what I want is what they want. And when you have the respect for people, and you're trying to take what they want and what they're working so hard for, it sucks. I'm a big fan of the team down in freestyle, and where it's tough sometimes, but that's the game, man. The game is about bashing up the person across from you on the day, and everyone knows that it's not personal. And yeah, it is tough sometimes, but I'm starting to get better at it. And on this show, I'm cornering my fighters. You know, I'm not a promoter on the day. Like I don't need to be. I'll be wearing my scrappy MMA hat in Perth, no suit. I'm focused on the job at hand, and that is winning fights. And that's where my focus will remain from this point forth. You know, I feel like in the last couple of years, I've been really torn in two directions, and I need to refocus my direction as being a coach first and foremost. And that is the hat I'll wear on June 10. And I'm looking forward to having only one thing to worry about.
What do you sort of see? I want to talk a bit more about the other fights, you know, sort of coming up as well. But like, what do you sort of see ahead, you know, depending on sort of who gets that win? Like with the tear, say, with Justin sort of being on, you know, and he's sort of quietly gone about his business, we sort of said in terms of what he does in the cage. He's actually one guy that for as much as he sort of got to say on who he's sort of fighting, he's never really sort of spoken to me sort of any great length about, you know, what he'd maybe like to do in terms of the next step of his career. But you know, I mean, for a guy that sort of had that kind of, you know, split kind of record and then go on that massive like 4-fight win streak and that sort of thing, you know, getting the title, like, do you sort of see like a future for Justin if he sort of keeps going on this trajectory to do other things maybe outside of Australia internationally? Because it's not something I've personally heard him sort of stress too much about the way other fighters sort of might do, you know, different parts of their career.
I think both of these men are the cream of the crop at featherweight at the moment in this country. And I think whoever wins this fight deserves to go forward. And you know, it's a tough division. There are some good fighters in that division that have been overcome for both of these people to get to where they're at, you know. So but Justin definitely should be in the picture. And I think he's not saying it, and because I think what happens with a lot of people is their long-term goal gets in the way of their short-term goal. And you've got to focus on winning in Australia first. Like, you know, after this fight, maybe it's time for him to start using his platform and start talking about it. You know, I'm sure he's in the same room as Volk. He's training with Volk. He's the same weight class as Volk. I'm sure like he's around it and he's around people, and people surely know who he is. Do you know what I mean? So you become undeniable. You keep winning, and that's what he does. So no one deserves it more than him. That's for sure.
No, I mean, I think that's actually one of the things that he said that, you know, Volk passed down for him so much is that, you know, the biggest thing he's got to be undeniable. I mean, that's sort of what he's made himself like, you know, over the last couple of years of the run he's been on. But, you know, Rod also there, I mean, when you sort of take a look at Rod's record, I mean, anyone that's sort of looking at Tapology or whatever and sort of taking a look at records and what they think needs to look good to be able to sort of elevate to that next platform. I mean, if you took away, you know, some of the things on Rod's record, like even that fight that he had against, was it Khan Offley maybe? And like, you know, that fight that could have sort of gone either way. And, you know, maybe you're sort of looking at, you know, 8-3.
Yeah, but you can't take anything away. Look, It's there. It's happened. It's in the books. Yeah. Khan won that fight. I'm like, it's caused so much fucking drama, that whole Rod Khan thing over the years, because they built up in this rivalry and they've never got to fight it out again since, for whatever reason. So Khan won that fight. He gets the W in the books. That's as simple as it is. There's no other argument to be had. Rod's record's great anyway. Do you know what I mean? And he's another one who doesn't talk about what's next. He's another one who's just, have you ever heard Rod go, I should be in the UFC? No, he just goes on and goes, I want to fight as soon as possible. Who's next? Who have I got to defend my belt against? Him and Justin are very similar, man.
Rod's that sort of guy that, you know, he's an in the moment type guy. I mean, I know we've sort of spoken about what he'd sort of like for the future, but he's so sort of pensive in the way that, you know, he just sort of talks about it. He's realistic too. When I say realistic, I don't mean in the fact that he thinks he's just going to get beaten depending on who he sort of comes up against, but he sort of doesn't, I mean, you know better than anyone, he doesn't sort of get ahead of himself. You know, he sort of lets his fighting sort of do the talking, and, you know, what's going to be is going to be. You know, he's going to come there and sort of put it on, and you know, God, everyone loves watching a Rod Costa fight. So tons to look forward to there, like we said. But I mean, you know, the one that's getting my juices going for sure as well is that co-main event, Blake Donnelly, Quillan Salkeld. I think maybe the last time I actually talked to you and I was sort of asking you, I think, you know, who you were sort of looking forward to, who was sort of coming up. I think Quillan was one of the actual guys that you talked about. Might have even been on another show you talked that Quillan's one of the guys that you're super intrigued about sort of coming up.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a guy that, you know, he's 3-1 as a professional, going straight into a title shot. Now people have asked, like, is that sort of early, like depending on sort of where you're at. But I mean, like how he's looking, how good he looked in his last fight in Perth. I mean, another guy that's, we're talking about Harry Webb before and how good he looked and that sort of thing. I mean, Quillen Soulkill with like his stand-up game, Blake Donnelly with his stand-up game, their age and everything. I mean, that's a fight to look forward to. That's going to be so epic.
Yeah, absolutely. And you think about, I've always talked about Quillen because I'm from Perth and he's from Perth. So I've watched him like grow and develop on the Perth scene. And he's very active. He's not only just fighting MMA, he fought loads of Thai fights when he was younger. And I think he's probably done some boxing. He's one of them lads that was just out competing all the time. Fight. Every amateur show, fight. And it shows. And he's good, man. And you see his development. And he lost that fight to Pablo early in his I think it was his pro debut. And he's gone on the tear since.
Finishes in all his fights, yeah.
And you could see how much it meant to him, and that's what I mean. So for me, like you talk about wearing two hats, like I was so happy for Pablo, but also like that's the guy that I'd tip to be a star in the future, a guy I respect hugely and a guy I think the world of, like in terms of talent. And he's such a nice person. Do you know what I mean? He's from my interactions with Quillen are only ever been positive. He's a positive person and he's a great fighter and he's tough and he's been through some things and it's not been all his own way in his fights. And, it is early. It is. And if he wins, it's a murderer's row ahead of him. But him and his team obviously feel like he's ready for that. And he's got a tough challenge ahead of him in Blake. Blake's hugely experienced. He's done this all before. He's fighting regularly now. He's found his groove. He's looking good. He's solid everywhere. It's a great, and for Quillen at 3-1, he loses this fight to the champ. He's not like, it's almost a win-win. Do you know what I mean? Because he's still only so young and he's still so early in his career. He could win another couple of fights and be in the same spot. So
was there any sort of thought, I know you said that, Cam sort of does most of the matchmaking, but was there any sort of thought to, match him up against sort of anyone else? Was this just the time was right, in terms of like putting him into a title fight right now, just, like as far as like, how good he sort of looked in all his fights, like how much sort of thought process goes into, looking at a guy that's still early in his professional career and then slotting him straight into a title fight at that point?
I think it's rude to like speak, not rude, but like to over talk about Quillen and not talk about Blake. Blake wants to be busy.
I want to get to Blake, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so in this decision making, it's not just Cam and I like going, oh yeah, let's let Blake's like knocking on the door, going, come on, mate, I need to fight. Like, who's ready for me? Let me fight June 10. I want to get another one in. So, who makes sense? Who's a prospect? And Quillen stuck his out as soon as we asked him. He bit the hand off. He was ready to go. And Blake could have sat out. And things might have happened for that lad, Sure. But he's took the fighter's route, and I couldn't have more respect for him either. And he's not only but he's took the guy, like the up and comer, the prospect, the dangerous prospect. He's took a risk here, Blake. He took a big risk. He was sat in a real nice position, and he's took a big risk, and he obviously backs himself, and his team back him, and they think they can win this fight. So that's why he's took the risk. And fighters want to fight. So it's encouraging to see that he wants to get back in there. He's off a good performance, and he's ready to keep the momentum. Fighting's about momentum and confidence. And if you're feeling it and you're in the zone, he wants to take advantage of that. I'm sure he can't wait to get his hands on Quillen. Those two fights alone. This card is selling at this moment faster than the last one. I'm sure it's going to slow down.
I wanted to ask about that. I think what you said that I think we're sort of running a cage side seats or something like that already. Like, everything's
cage side sold out.
Gone.
There's about 15 VIP seats left. I've got one of 6 VIP boxes left. And then just the GA seats. But it's people are excited. And I know we've got the return of Wes Kappa. He's a Perth legend, combat sports legend, kickboxer, boxer. He's had MMA fights. He fought back in the day and stuff that weird, like in a square thing. And there was a Combat 8 or whatever it was. I think
like the actual square cage thing. Like,
yeah,
I've seen only one of those once. Like, I think it was actually like watching like an old Anthony Smith fight, like UFC Anthony Smith, like fighting in a square cage. Like, I've never seen anything like that before. I didn't even know it was a thing.
Yeah, it was, and the rules were weird. You could only be on the ground for X amount of time, I think, or something. I can't remember. But anyway, he's a local legend, and he's got a tough ass. Another John Bruin, former opponent of Blake Donnelly, so obviously of that champ level status, and Wed's making his comeback into MMA after many times going straight in at the top end, but with a pedigreed striker like Wes Kappa, you can't just put him back in with an amateur or a new pro. It's unfair to do so. And Bruin's the perfect opponent, a seasoned guy. He's not going to be this. He's not going to have not seen anything Wes has got with the room that he stands in on a daily basis. He's again, that's a really interesting fight and a real great fight for Perth. Holden Bates is back, after that great performance against John Farke last time out.
Crowd was going nuts for that fight. Like, I think especially for having sort of Elden Night sort of thing there. Like, I think that was one of the sort of the loudest parts of the night during that card in Perth last time he fought on there. Like, I think he had a lot of English fans there in the
hooligans. Bloody hooligans,
going nuts for him, man. It was incredible. And of course, you had Easy and his team and all those guys going nuts for Varke. It was that was cool. That was a very cool experience, hearing those sort of two.
Yeah, and
each other.
Holden, credit to him. The last time he was there was against Della, so he's gone straight back into the sort of deep end, and had an amazing performance. It was a close fight, but amazing performance. And Stu there, obviously, he's been in there with the best of them. Been in there with Izzy. It's another. It's funny how this game is so so intertwined, because the team is so small. So that's going to be an amazing fight. Who else have we got on there? What else can we talk about?
Maybe
talk about Kappa
coming back in as well. That's cool. I mean, to have that sort of on the prelims and that sort of thing as well. McConnell versus Mangos. I mean,
McConnell Mangos. That's another one that both those boys could be fighting again in 3 years for the belt at featherweight. McConnell. He disappeared for a while. God knows what happened to him, but I'm so glad he's back. He's one of the most exciting fighters. He's so talented. He sort of took MMA over here by storm a little bit. Then he went over east and dominated over there a couple of guys. And he's a really talented guy. And the one fight he had at pro on Eternal was an absolute bloodfest. If I remember that, it only lasted about 4 minutes, but there was claret everywhere. It was Aaron McConnell is a spectacular fighter, and George Mangos is also coming out of this team in Sydney that just produce class fighters, man. Because you got Janowski on the card as well. Just class fighters, man. Good everywhere, fast, explosive, quality guys. And that Mangos McConnell, that's not to be missed. That's another one that is a treat for Perth fans with a local lad involved in it. I'm proper doing a promoter's job on this one, but I'm excited. I am a fan of Eternal.
Yeah. Oh, it's such a cool looking card. I mean, even sort of even just some of the names I'm just sort of familiar. Not that I've necessarily.
Seb Sazalay.
Yep.
I can't ever pronounce his name. Sorry, Seb. Seb Saleh. Seb. Sorry, mate. Seb versus Chris, right? I'm not even going to try and ruin
Chris. Versus Chris, yep. I'm sure Blake's going to announce it exactly the same way. When
Seb versus Chris is going to... I watched Chris recently on the Gold Coast. Phenomenal performance, real exciting guys to watch. Same team as Mangos, and Seb's over in freestyle now full-time, but based out of Perth, so he's got a big fan base here. A lot of people come and see him. Darcy Spowart's coming back. Obviously another local boy, one of my boys, fighting flyweight against Jack Hayes, who's been over here a few times and upset the apple cart on more than one occasion, as Miles Simpson's boys like to do. Mate, I could go on and on. Have I met Toby Meach? Toby Meach and Jamie Reneuf backing up off that close split decision. Was it a split decision?
It was a split decision.
Yeah, close split decision loss to Ant, coming that back and then looking to get one back straight away on the team with taking on Toby, on relatively short notice, fair play. It's about a month straight after the last fight, basically. Toby's original opponent pulled out, but again, an interesting one, Toby likes to grapple, but obviously Jamie does too. And Jamie showed his kicking game, took us by surprise, and compromised that front leg of man in that fight as well. Yeah, we've got some insider information at least, but fair play to Jamie for making the mammoth trek across from Cairns or wherever it is he's from in the far north of Queensland, all the way down to us in Western Australia. But yeah, another great fight, another high level professional fight. We haven't even spoken about the undercard.
Well, I mean, we're already in the undercard. I mean, it's so cool. Like, you don't always get, with these sort of cards. Like, normally you got the pro fights that is pretty much filling out, the main card, and then the prelims are usually your amateur guys. But I mean, having like two, fairly high end pro fights that are on the prelims as well. I mean, that's cool. Like, to sort of get that sort of kicking off, because you normally sort of notice that jump. I can't remember if back in the last Perth card that we had, if it was amateurs all the way through the prelims and then the pros. But
yeah, it was.
I remember saying, because I had my best mate with me cage side, and as soon as like the pros like came in, and you just notice that shift straight away, like in terms of the talent. And I said to him, I was like, these are the pro guys right now. Like, we know it's making they look. So to get this Eternal 76 card and like having those guys on the prelims, like, it's just like that's top to bottom, like, good stuff to look forward to for sure.
Yeah, I'm really, 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 really excited for it. Everything's set up well. The venue there, as is so perfect for Eternal. Yeah. Like, it's such a fun night out, regardless of fights. It's a great setup, and yeah, I love doing the Perth shows. And I'm actually, like I said, really looking forward to taking the promoter's hat off just on the day, and working with the team and being backstage with my boys, and just going out there. And look, to be fair, my team's underperformed for the first part of the year on Eternal, and we've been working really fucking hard in the background. And the boys are motivated. They've got a rocket up their ass. I don't know whether I stuck it there or they stuck it there themselves, but
it's there.
We're ready to go, and I feel like we've really leveled up since that show too. And I hope that the boys can display that, and that they've all got tough fights. There's not one of my boys that's got to walk over there. So I want to see them go out and perform, and I'm really excited to see them in some hard battles and see that work really pay off for them. So I'm pumped, man. It's only 3 weeks away. It's not that far.
3 weeks. It creeps up so fast. I just want to, before we move on, because just a couple of things I want to talk about before we sort of wrap it up, but just to, I was saying, like, to sort of shining a little bit of love on Blake, as far as being able to defend his championship for the first time. In terms of that fight, like, is there a particular way that you sort of see that sort of playing out? Like, I know how good, Blake Donnelly is on the feet and that sort of thing. We know how good Quillen is. Looking at Quillen, like some of his fights and that sort of thing, the grappling game, he sort of showed off, very sort of high level and that sort of thing too. But like, do you sort of look at that and see that playing sort of out in a certain way? Like, Blake is a striker and that sort of thing. And the way he sort of switches stance and that sort of stuff, like, is that, I mean, it's got Fight of the Night written all over for a start, but can you talk a little bit about Blake and what he sort of brings to the table for the people that don't know, if they don't already know, like, just how good that he is, and what he means?
Oh, absolutely. And he's got a teammate, Tom Pratt, that really impressed me as well. And it's obviously the jab, man, the straight punches, the fundamental.
That jab of Blake is like absolute money. Like, he was tearing up Martinez in that last fight with that. Like, that
shows quality for me. Like, fighters who fight behind a jab shows class, composure, and quality. So it tells me all I need to know, really. And then you look at the rest of his game that he's put together. He's a solid wrestler, he's a solid grappler. He can mix it up. You think you're gonna have a stand-up fight with him, and he has the ability to wrestle. So, you think he's Blake Donnelly, he's going to come out and box me, and he can use MMA because he's capable everywhere, and his fundamentals are solid everywhere. How do I see the fight going? I've not really looked that far into it. Selfishly, I'd love them to stay on the feet and bang it out. Because it would be so high level, and I love beautiful technique, and both of those boys have it in spades. But I'm sure it's going to be an MMA fight. There's going to be mad scrambles, like Quillen loves a scramble. It's going to be ground and pound. There's going to be some solid stand-up exchanges. It's got, I couldn't pick it, and like I say, I don't really have time to get too involved in other people's fights, because I've got so many of my own to worry about that.
I mean, it's all on paper there too, right? I mean, anyone who sort of watched those guys, have a scrap. I mean, again, like, just so high level. And you're right. I mean, Blake with his jab and that sort of thing, and the switch stance that he's got. I mean, what bigger test as well? I mean, as far as like having to go up against a grappler, like taking the title from David Martinez. We know what a beast that David Martinez as far as a grappler goes. Like that, especially because he's not very old, Blake. I mean, he's 25 or 26, something like that. Like still not like that's still young in terms of this game. I hope I'm not getting your age wrong there, Blake. I know you are sort of pretty young, but I mean, showing off that sort of well-rounded gameness against a guy like David Martinez to actually win that title. I mean, it's high level stuff, and you can't speak highly enough about how excited everyone, myself especially, like coming into that fight. Like as we said, top to bottom, huge card.
I'm proud of little old Perth again. it's hard to get to, and props to all the boys making the long journey across. I do it myself when I come the other way, and the boys do it a lot when they travel. So we understand the effort it takes and how freaking mind-numbingly boring it is crossing the country to indulge in these short trips, which are, for one person. Great.
Mind you, I mean, probably because the UFC was on last time, but man, I know you vomited when I looked at the flights coming over from. I'm close to Melbourne, but obviously making that trip over to the UFC, like holy shit, like the cost of the flights, like coming over and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, Perth's great. Like Perth, actually, the first time I went to Perth, I don't want to get too much into it, but came over with my wife years ago, and we were there for not even half a day. I think we were down at like Cottesloe Beach or something like that. And I just said, like, honestly, I would move here. And I've never thought about that anywhere outside of like, I'm, sort of country town, sort of near Melbourne. But as soon as I was there, I was like, I'd move here. Like such a good city, like good vibe everywhere for everything. Like it's not obviously Melbourne big, but it's just got everything you need, like in terms of culture and that sort of thing. Like I can understand why, for the size of it is, and the sort of the diversity that's there, like why it does get such intrigue and such good attendance and such, good turnouts for things like fight cards. I think actually the last time I spoke to you, when we talked about the last card that was there, like I was blown away by just the amount of people outside the venue at HBF Stadium, like waiting to get in.
Yeah.
Before the card started. Like that was, I didn't know what to expect. I think I said, like, I was casually sort of coming, like, we'll get there just when the prelims start. And I thought I was just going to walk in. Like, and it's just back to front. Like I'm looking at the line, like it's so huge. And I know you had your sort of thoughts on that too, but I mean, that was just a poster for like, there is a big sort of thing happening, like as far as the interest in the grassroots, I guess you'd sort of say.
Yeah. And I think what we've managed to do through thick and thin is consistently put shows on, and anything without wanting to get too like
consistent shows, like without having massive gaps in between sort of
thing. And quality, like to get good at anything, you need to be consistent, and to get a following at anything, you need to deliver consistent quality if you're a brand, and you need to. And I think in Perth we've started to build that people like Eternal now, and it's more than just an MMA show. It's like a thing that happens 3 times a year in Perth. We're starting to get the 2,000 order and fill up our stadiums and stuff like that, and people come and have a good time. And I think that's really important. And the action's always good quality. So we've stuck at it. It's been tough. We had a boxing ring. We had all those problems. We had COVID. We had, a litany of problems like running a fight promotion. You can't get people over here. People miss planes. But you just got to stick at it. And if you get this far in, it's obviously, if you've come this far, you're either really rich and don't mind throwing money away, or you figure out what you're doing. You know what I mean? And we fit into the second category. Unfortunately, I wish I was just throwing money away and I didn't have to worry about the finances of it all. But I think it's a credit to Cam and I and the Perth scene for just sticking at it, man. And we've got champions. We've got Jack Della, Stephen Ursay, Rod Costa, Jack Becker. I know some of them aren't champions anymore. We've got Quill going in now and having his pop. We do all right for a little. It's a small old town, but we can fight over it.
Yep. Very cool. I mean, I think just on Eternal as a whole, like one of the comments I've heard about, I don't know how other shows run, but
I missed out Ryan Gray. He'll be really upset with me. Ryan Gray was the Eternal champ once. I can't miss a name off like that. Mitch Martin.
Ryan Gray. There it is.
Mitch Martin as well. They're my boys. I can't not put them in there. But Perth's punching. That's a lot of champions in a decade.
Yep. No, huge. Yeah, lot of cool things coming out of Perth. Like, obviously you're sort of part of the world and that sort of thing. Like, definitely enjoy getting over there.
I thought you were going to say you're one of them. I was going to say thanks, Lou. That's very kind.
Yeah, I was building to that. So just jump out too far ahead of me. I wanted to get to that. So a little surprise.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'll save the praise for the end.
Yeah, of course. I was going to say it off camera. Done. Yeah. Just,
okay.
No, very cool. Obviously, HBO Stadium, lots to look forward to there for June 10th. Big card Eternal 76. Yeah. Very quickly as well, just sort of a bit of a look ahead. I mean, Eternal 77. Obviously, we don't really have a card made there, but come back to the Gold Coast July 1st. So just something for fans to look out for there too. Obviously, Gold Coast is where most of the action sort of happens. As far as Eternal MMA goes, obviously we talked about coming back for September as well for when the UFC comes back down for UFC 293. So there's always something happening, as you said, like the consistency's there with the shows, like and sort of booking dates far in advance and that sort of thing, and knowing that you're going to be able to fill it up with talent. A lot of cool things for everyone to sink their teeth into in this scene for sure. Like stacking it up closer towards the end of the year, like a lot of cool things. Is there anything?
Yeah, 100%.
I think about what's sort of coming out. Maybe you don't know. Cam sort of does most of the matchmaking, but is there anything in the pipeline for Eternal 77 for Gold Coast as far as matches that you sort of know?
You know what? We spoke about matches just yesterday. I was in the car. I remember having the conversation, and I can't remember any of them off the top of my head. But I know Roy Armistead, who I spoke about before, who's just fighting out of Scrappy for the first time, is on that card against Thomas Moya from Integrated, an Argentinian fighter. So that should be a really interesting fight.
Argentinian?
Yeah. I don't know how long he's been. It's hard to find too much about him, but Adrian,
it's always cool when you get like someone that's just sort of the not the usual. Obviously, obviously it's Australian promotion, so most of everything we got here is Australian guys, that sort of thing. But and every now and again, you might sort of get a guy from like an Argentina of all places. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. So, and there are like a good few other fights already matched for that already. So I'm sure they're going to start dropping soon. It's not that far away. And then the week after that, there's a couple of Eternal guys representing on UFC Fight Week. What is it called? Fan Expo Week, whatever it's called.
Week, is that what it's called?
International Fight Week.
International Fight Week, but yeah, of course.
Shannon Ross is getting
see him back in there.
Has got another scrap, and Jack obviously fighting Sean Brady for the number 9 spot.
Yeah,
huge in the UFC, massive fight. So
talk about that. I mean, that's a big matchup. I mean, people have been calling for Jack, to get sort of the higher ranked opponents, and justifiably so. I mean, he's finishing everyone in the first round. I mean, you said it from the beginning, and it's really cool because I mean, you see so many guys that your job as a coach and that sort of thing is to praise the guys and talk about what's sort of in their future and that sort of thing. And so many coaches do say, this guy's going to be a world champion. I believe this guy's going to be a world champion. I believe he's going to do damage. But I mean, we're seeing it play out true to your word, true to Cam's word, like that, what you guys thought about Jack in the beginning of his career, the huge story, obviously going, 0-2 in his first couple of fights. Obviously, we're not at the title yet, but I mean, everything that he's sort of doing and the buzz that he's generating is just so in line and on the path of what you said was going to play out for Jack. Like you're seeing that happening in real time. Like you knew this from the beginning. This is where he's sort of going to be at, and here we are, like fighting against Sean Brady, which is should be a cracker fight. Like talk about that, like what you're sort of expecting there.
Yeah, it's good. Jack deserves it. He puts the work in. He never lets his foot off the gas. That's not saying that he knows when to rest and all that kind of stuff, but he's in the gym on the daily. Like we talk about consistency. He's never not in the gym. He's never the one that doesn't show up for training. There's a one thing the good ones all have, and that is that you don't need to be ringing them up, finding out whether they're going to be in the gym or not. They're normally asking you where the keys are so they can get in a little bit early. So it's great to see him doing what we thought he was going to do. Obviously it's easy to say, and when you've never operated at that level, you don't quite know. Like you have, I was pretty sure, but you never know if there is just that massive leap at that level that you don't know about till you get there, or something like that. But yeah, it's exciting. It's been sort of very meteoric rise. It's happened fast. Like we've only had a year in the UFC to get our feet under the table, and we're in a top 10 fight. So, but I back Jack against all of them. If Jack turns up and performs and does what he's capable of, he'll beat them all. And I've said it for a long time, and I don't change that. And we're looking forward to the Brady challenge. It's nice to fight someone of that caliber, someone that's highly touted. Obviously, he's in a tough spot coming off of a loss. what does that do to an undefeated fighter? Is he going to come back a man possessed? Do we get the best ever Sean Brady you've ever seen, or do we get like someone who's a little bit damaged by what just happened to him?
Well, I mean, I think the thing you said as well, I can't remember what show it was, but I saw you talking on something recently about, he had that loss against Bilal Muhammad, like Bilal Muhammad, not necessarily known, as like a good striker, but not prolific, not a knockout artist or anything like that. But Bilal Muhammad, all respect to him, finished Sean Brady. And, I think you sort of said like, Bilal Muhammad is finishing Sean Brady and like,
yeah,
sure that Jack has to be able to do something similar, like, as far as his boxing and all that sort of thing. Like,
but I don't think Brady fights the same fight. Like, it's all well and good watching two grapplers have a boxing match and go, oh, look. But I don't think Brady's going to fight like that. He's not going to try and be indulging and stand up with Jack. So we're not training for that kind of fight. And I don't think it really matters. Like, I say that in that, oh, look at what happened to him. But if he's smart, he's not going to be giving Jack room to do that. So that's what we're planning for, is Brady's going to try and implement his game plan. He obviously feels like he's going to have the advantage on the ground. I don't even necessarily think that's true, but that's where he's going to want to put the fight. And we're fully aware of that. So we don't expect him to stand in front of us like he did with Bilal Muhammad. So it's all great to watch those fights and get that information, but you've got to understand he's not going to fight that fight against Jack. So you can't take too much from it, if that makes sense. You just know that if Jack does ping him, he's going to shit himself. So,
what is it you think, like with Jack, like, for how much of a, like, as you said, the meteoric rise that he sort of had, with everything that he's doing against the level of opponents that he's doing in the UFC, like, what would you sort of say is like the most defining factor in like the run that he's sort of having, or so how good he is? Because it looks like when he's fighting, he's sort of going about it in his own pace. Like he's not sort of going out there and just rushing guys and sort of blitzing and that sort of thing. Like there's not necessarily like this crazy sort of flash or anything about it, but he's knocking everyone out in the first round. Like he's just going out there and sort of making it look, I don't want to say easy, but I mean, first round finishes, and he never sort of looks like he's, breaking that much of a sweat. Like, like what is it so different? Like, is his footwork? Like, is his IQ? Like, what's the big thing that separates him from other guys that, might have sort of the skills, but they're just not doing what he's doing?
I think everyone at that level is supremely good. You know what I mean? Like they all have like high level ability, but sometimes it comes down to execution and IQ. I think are the two major factors. Like you train for 3 months for a fight, but you only get 15 minutes to exhibit what you've been working on. And if you fuck up your exhibit, it's just another 3, 4, 5 months until you get to do another one. So there's a lot of pressure in that. And I think sometimes that pressure gets in the way of people's performances, and people's true ability is not often shown in the cage because of that pressure. And Jack deals with that well, you know, and I think given the tools that he has, the footwork, the head movement, the balance, all of those things coupled with the fight IQ and the composure. And so he knows how to use his tools in his tool bag. He doesn't just have a bag full of tools. He has a bag full of tools that he can use subconsciously and knows in any situation.
And like, he's such like, I mean, I've never met him, but, you see him on TV and that sort of thing. And he's just such an unassuming guy. Like, he's not out there, talking about this is what I'm going to do and that sort of thing. Like humble, like just chill sort of bloke. Like it's like fighting is his life. And he just goes out there. Even the way he sort of answers questions, that sort of thing, like short answers, it's just like he's so sure of himself, but like he's just not getting ahead of himself. Like I think that, and like that seems like from the outsider's perspective, that seems to help him so much, is that he's not pouring unnecessary pressure on himself by, just talking about everything he's going to do. Like he's just like, we're just going to do this one step at a time. And I know what skills I sort of got. Let's go out there and do the thing. And that seems to help him so much.
Task at hand, and that's what it's all about. And Jack said it very well himself. He said, I don't disrespect anyone outside the cage, but inside the cage, he's an animal. Like he flicks a switch, and it's amazing to see him do it, but he changes from being the nicest human being in the world who wouldn't hurt a fly. You'd have to do something really horrific to get Jack angry, like really horrific. Like he's just laid back.
When do you see that switch flick? Like, do you sort of see that at the back? Like before he walks out to the cage, he sort of gets
not at all.
Even
when he's standing there, it's just when the fight starts, he has bad intentions in his mind, He wants to give as much damage as possible and take as little.
And we enjoy watching it. Yeah. Can't wait to see him back in there. As you said as well, Shannon Ross coming back in, like a lot of cool things for Australians coming up. I think we've talked about everything that we need to sort of talk about. Of course, Eternal 76 coming up June 10th, HBF Stadium.
Can't wait. Let's go.
Guide's gone. Let's go. We've still got a few tickets left. I think you send the general admission, time of recording, whatever that's up, but make sure you sort of get on it. Huge card. I've been there once before. My one and only Eternal show, HBF Stadium. Nothing like
What a
it.
show.
What a show it was. So, make sure you're getting onto that one because, my God, that card is stacked. Couple of title fights in there you want to see. Justin Van Heerden versus Rod Costa, featherweight champion versus the bantamweight champion. Blake Donnelly versus Quillen Soulkilled for the lightweight championship. Couple of young guns in there. As I said, returning Alden Bates, Stu Dare, McConnell Mangos, Kappa Bruin, Salah, Yusi Yanovsky, like just top to bottom huge. So make sure you're tuning in for the UFC Fight Pass if you're not going to get there for that live event over in Perth. A lot to look forward to for the rest of the year. So, Ben, thanks for coming on the show to have a bit of a chat about it. Looking forward to seeing how it all goes down. And we'll do it again sometime. We're going to talk about the future cards.
Cheers, Luke. Thanks, mate.
Appreciate it, man.